Welcome everyone to today's video where we'll be furthering on our conversation on this end-to-end with AWS and Databricks. Today we'll be focusing on ingestion, all right? Ingesting our data from sources to S3, okay? So we'll be focusing on ingestion right here, right? That's where we'll be focusing on getting our data from here to S3, and I'm excited. Today is our first video in this particular episode, and a lot of you are looking up forward to that. I'm as well looking forward to sharing that with you. Okay, now that we know what we're about to do, so let's go straight to our demo. All right, in our previous episodes, we've talked about how to set up your AWS account, and so I won't go over that today. I'm just going to focus on what we have for today. Now, we're going to start with the taxi trip data, okay? Taxi trip data. I will pull up the source again, and we're going to do that together. Remember, we talked about that the taxi data is in packet file, and we're going to download it and upload it to S3. However, before we do all of that, right, there's certain things we need to put in place. First of all, let's download. We're going to start with the July data, okay? I'm just going to click on it, and I will make this link available in the YouTube. All right, so let's click on that. Yeah, we have the data downloaded. You can see it's downloaded. Beautiful. Now let's go back to our console. Okay, we want to focus on S3, and I want to say, you might see some other buckets in mine as well. So each of these is what we call bucket. Don't worry too much if yours is just brand new. Just start the process all over again. In this video, I've accommodated the fact that you might just be starting your own afresh, so you should be fine. Okay, we're gonna create the bucket together. Okay, and we're gonna call these taxi weather analytics S3 bucket. Okay, and we're gonna be using this naming convention, taxi analytics S3. Okay, taxi weather analytics, and then we're going to be using that going forward. We don't need to do much. We can expose it to public because this is just a public data and it's just for demo. And however, in the real project, you won't do that. You'll have to make sure the configuration works fine, but for the purpose of learning, we're gonna leave it open to the public. Okay, now let's create the bucket. There is no let's just check to see if there is any option we need to activate. At this point there is none, so we just click on create bucket. Awesome, so our bucket has been created. Remember, the first task is for us to upload that packet file into S3. Okay, so we're gonna click on this new bucket, and then we're gonna create a new folder. Okay, and then we're gonna call this New York City, since that's what we are dealing with, and we just gonna create the folder, and then within that, we already know we have two sources, right? So one is the taxi, the other is the weather. So we're gonna continue and create this for taxi, a folder for taxi, and then we're gonna do that. Also, we know that we could have multiple years. Right now we are looking at 2025. What if we get to 2026? What's gonna happen? So we need to make accommodation for that, right? So we click on create folder, and we have 2025 data. So we structure it per month, and create the month. For this particular month, we are starting with July, so we'll say 07. Okay, all right, so beautiful. Now we can then upload our data right here. Okay, so I'm gonna just have it downloaded on the other screen. I'm just gonna drag and drop. Okay, I'm gonna use the one I had before, not just the one we just deleted, but you can not just the one we just downloaded. So you can basically do the same as well. Use the one we just downloaded, but because I have one already before, so I just drag and drop and it's asking me, this is the file, do I really want to upload it? I'm gonna say I want to upload it, okay, and then I'm gonna wait for it. Okay, let's wait for it. All right, it's loading. Okay, beautiful. So we're gonna close that and check to make sure we have the file. Awesome, we have the file. So that concludes our first ingestion. Now this is the first one. I just want us to know how it works. You can start having some question in mind every time we need to download this. That do we always have to download and upload? That will be more very manual, and there could be issues. So we'll look at automation. We'll spend some time on the automation later, but for the purpose of learning, let's just leave it like that. Okay, now that we are done with that, okay, so let's look at what else we have. Now let's always refer so we can all be on the same page. So now we are done with this upload, right, to this data, right? And then we're gonna go back and then do the Lambda. Oops, we missed something. We missed this folder. We didn't call it landing. Okay, we're gonna have to go back and fix that. Okay, I'm glad we missed that, because then it gives you opportunity to also know how we will fix that. Okay, so what we're gonna do is that we're gonna come back here and we're gonna try and put this folder into a new folder. Okay, and we'll see how that works. So we call it landing. Okay, and we just call it like that, and we try to move this. Let's see if we can move it. Move, and now we're gonna say move it here, and then move. Okay, so let's see if that works. Okay, it looks to work. Beautiful, awesome. Okay, perfect. So that simply works. So we missed one part and then we quickly fixed it. Now the next part of it is that we're gonna do the weather data, right, which is in the we're gonna use API for that. So for us to do that, okay, we need to use what we call the Lambda function. Now you're gonna come back and then try to look for Lambda. It's a service in AWS. So I already have it here, but if I don't have it, I just type Lambda. This is where it's more like a it's create the environment for you, and then all you just need is to plug in your code, and then it will give it the right permission, and it will be able to run whatever code that you want it to run, right? In our case, we're using Python, and then we're going to talk a little bit on Python as well. All right, okay, let's keep going. So we'll click on create function, and then we're going to do this together. Okay, we're gonna call it taxi weather lambda. Okay, so but we're gonna put analytics. All right, analytics lambda. So taxi weather analytics lambda. Okay, runtime. Okay, we're gonna use Python 3.13. Okay, and architecture we're gonna use x86_64. That's okay. Then we need to specify, Lambda is a different service, S3 is a different service. How do they talk to one another? So we're gonna create, I have one already, IAM role that I have already created, but because for the purpose of learning, I'm gonna create a new one, and we're just gonna say create a new role with basic Lambda permissions, and then we update that afterwards. Okay, so let's see. We're gonna create one. So it's already telling us to see the way it's creating it. Service role takes the weather data, and it just quickly created that. Okay, so we're gonna wait for the function to create, and then while we are doing that, we're gonna open. Okay, it's already created. Beautiful. Now we need to fix our IAM role before we start writing our code, otherwise it won't be able to talk between Lambda and S3. They can't talk to one another. Or what we can do is that okay, let's just fix that once and for all. So we go to IAM role, and we already have an idea of the row that just got created. Don't worry, I have multiple rows here, but for you, you may not have that. But don't worry about it. Just create your own role and try to fix it. Okay. Now within this role, there are various policies, and the one that we activated was the basic policy. Okay. So now we can try and understand what's going on here. It's basically saying that allow logs, create log group. So it didn't really tell us much about how, S3 and whatnot, right? So we need to write a new statement here that would allow S3. There's nothing including S3 here. So good news, I already have that somewhere, so you can also copy as well, and use it for your own as well. So we're just gonna put a comma here. Just follow me closely. Oh, before we do that, we have to click on edit, so it allows us to be able to make that change. And then we're just gonna drop this guy, and then it's gonna say effect allow, and what we're asking is put object, right? We want it to be able to put the object. We can put the get and other access as well, but for the purpose of this exercise, that's what we want to do. Now, a few things we have to fix here. The resource we are using right now is not the bucket. This is not a bucket, right? This is a bucket that I'd used before. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back and try to get our bucket. Okay, we're gonna leave here, go back to S3, and then copy our bucket name. Okay, and let's quickly do that. So we have our bucket right here. We're gonna copy it, and then we're just gonna update this one. All right, so that it has access to the right bucket we want it to have access to. All right, now that's it. We're gonna save next, and then we're gonna save. You can see it's telling us we have right permission to S3. That's what we want. All right, so we're gonna click on save, and then we're gonna come back here. We're gonna go back to our Lambda. Let's click on Lambda, and then it should have the right permission. So which one did we just create? This is the one we just created, right? Now we have the environment, but we don't have the code. Also, another good news, I have the code somewhere, but in this video I will try to just walk you through some of the code here, so that way you can kind of have an understanding of what especially for those that are new to Python. For those that have been using it, you should be familiar with this. So basically there are a few libraries that we have to import. So we'll basically import a couple of libraries and functions, and then we define a function with two parameters, right? Event and context. And here you can see I'll also make this code available, and you can adapt it to yours as well. Basically it's saying get S3 bucket name from environment variable, fall back to default if not set. Simply meaning that what we are doing is this is calling the environment variable, and we are saying this is the name of our bucket. Again, we have to copy the name of our new bucket. That's one from a previous use, or from a previous exercise that I've completed before. All right, so we're gonna come back here again and copy our bucket, and we can also just type it, right? But I just want to copy in this case, so there is no error. So we're just gonna have that. Okay, now we have copied the environment variable, and for the city, we already know the city. This is also called another environment variable called city. You notice there are some character here, right? The reason is because in for the HTTP you need to specify this. This is what is interpreted as a space, okay? But just use this as you see it. And then the latitude and longitude of New York City, this is what we have. And then we also define the parameters here. and then will then initialize what we call the Boto3 S3 client, because we need to interact with S3, so we need this client. And also we do the construct open Metro API URL, and this is how we build a construct. We make it dynamic as well. You can see we are referencing the latitude. We've already defined the variable above, the longitude as well, start date, and then we're also pulling some attributes here, and as well as the time zone. Okay. And then we're printing to be sure that we are fetching the data from this particular URL. Okay. And here we are making that request, right? So it's basically, this function is basically using calling that API with the URL. Okay. And then we can see the weather data here. It's essentially passing JSON responding to Python dictionary. Okay. And here we are defining now that we are able to access the data using the API, we need to define where we want the target in this case, which is going to be the folder part. This is what we had used before, but now we're using a different name, so I'm just going to use landing. All right, and then we just change this word to landing as well, so when I send it to you, you can use accordingly. There is no confusion. And then we're just going to use New York City, weather, start here, start date, pulling the year and the month, and then the file name. This is the format we want it to be, in this format, and that's what we defined here. And the S3 part, we want it to call the folder path / the file name. Okay, now having defined all of those variables, then we upload the weather data JSON to S3. So using all of these statements here, and so with that, we would print to say that, oh yeah, we have successfully completed this task. If for some reason it's not successful, then we would handle the error code accordingly. And then, but if it's successful, it will return success. Okay. That's just a quick walkthrough of the code. Now that you have this code, remember we had something different before, so we're gonna say deploy. So basically it needs to deploy before we can run the code. Now for us to run the code, now it's deployed, so we're gonna create a test event. Okay, and we're also going to define that as well. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so we're gonna define that as well, and before we do that, we're gonna call this test run cd2. Okay, and here we're gonna say, we're gonna come back here, and then we're gonna type in here trigger, and then we're gonna do manual host. And so that's what we need to specify here, and we should be able to invoke this particular code to run and see if it works. Okay, now that we have said that, we can close the test event, and then let's run it, see if our code works or if we get an error message. Okay, saying timeout, but we look at the functions here. Let's see, it's saying fetching data, I got there, but for some reason we are not getting the success because it's timing out. So we're gonna try again. Sometimes you have to run it twice for it to work because of the timeout issue. Okay, now it's telling us there is an issue somewhere. Okay, so we have to fix this. Oh, okay, there is a space in our bucket name. That's why the problem is. Okay, so let's deploy this new change. Okay, and then let's run the test again. This time around it should work. Okay, Let's run that again. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, awesome, awesome. Now that it runs successfully, let's go back and check our S3. Okay, let's go back and check your S3 to make sure we have the data. All right, now let's click on this one, and then we have landing, we have New York. Okay, awesome. We now have weather, that's a good thing. We have 2025, that's what we expect, and then we have July. Okay, so now this is the data that we have, right? So we can see what data. Okay, yeah, we expect July data, and then we have the July data. We can set the JSON. Also, if you want to take a look here, you can see the URL. So if you copy this URL just to have a look at what the data looks like, okay, you can copy this URL and try to have a look, and you should see this is the data we'll expect. Okay, this is really, really good. All right, so guys, that's where we're gonna end for today. I hope you're excited. There's still more to go. We still have to do some transformation. So let me just quickly give you a lowdown before we wrap up for today. Now, what we have done so far is that we have completed all of this. Now, the next phase of this demo will be, how do we get this data? Now we know we have it in JSON and Package file, but we have it now in S3. How do we get all of these transformation completed? That's gonna be the next video. Watch out, guys, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.